Good day to you. Welcome to Examplanet Services listening class. This is the listening aspect of the IELTS test. My name is Adeboyega, Adebobola. For you to stand a great chance at doing very well for the listening part of the IELTS, one of the things you have to do is to practice. So definitely we're going to consider a sample of the IELTS test. Then you're going to do a little practice with it. Please ensure that you choose an answer as you hear the tape being played. When you're done with that, we will do a little analysis on which answer choice you should have chosen.
Test 1. This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to part 1. Part 1. You will hear a woman phoning a friend to get information about a job agency. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, William. This is Amber. You said to phone if I wanted to get more information about the job agency you mentioned. Is now a good time?
Hi, Amber. Yes, fine. So the agency I was talking about is called Bankside. They're based in Docklands. I can tell you the address now. 497 East Side.
Okay, thanks. So is there anyone in particular I should speak to there?
The agent I always deal with is called Becky Jameson.
Let me write that down. Becky
Jameson. Jameison.
Do you have her direct line?
Yes, it's in my contacts somewhere. Right, here we are. 07866 510 333. I wouldn't call her until the afternoon if I were you. She's always really busy in the morning trying to fill last-minute vacancies. She's really helpful and friendly, so I'm sure it would be worth getting in touch with her for an informal chat.
It's mainly clerical and admin jobs they deal with, isn't it?
That's right. I know you're hoping to find a full-time job in the media eventually, but Becky mostly recruits temporary staff for the finance sector, which will look good on your CV, and generally pays better too.
Yeah, I'm just a bit worried because I don't have much office experience.
I wouldn't worry. They'll probably start you as a receptionist or something like that. So what's important for that kind of job isn't so much having business skills or knowing lots of different computer systems, it's communication that really matters, so you'd be fine there. And you'll pick up office skills really quickly on the job. It's not that complicated.
Okay, good. So how long do people generally need temporary staff for? It would be great if I could get something lasting at least a month.
That shouldn't be too difficult. But you're more likely to be offered something for a week at first, which might get extended. It's unusual to be sent somewhere for just a day or 2.
Right. I've heard the pay isn't too bad. Better than working in a shop or a restaurant.
Oh yes, definitely. The hourly rate is about £10, 11 if you're lucky.
That's pretty good. I was only expecting to get £8 or £9 an hour.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Do you want me to tell you anything about the registration process?
Yes, please. I know you have to have an interview.
The interview usually takes about an hour, and you should arrange that about a week in advance.
I suppose I should dress smartly if it's for office work. I can probably borrow a suit from Mum.
Good idea. It's better to look too smart than too casual.
Will I need to bring copies of my exam certificates or anything like that?
No, they don't need to see those, I don't think.
What about my passport?
Oh yes, they will ask to see that.
Okay.
I wouldn't get stressed about the interview though. It's just a chance for them to build a relationship with you, so they can try and match you to a job which you'll like. So there are questions about personality that they always ask candidates, fairly basic ones, and they probably won't ask anything too difficult, like what your plans are for the future.
Hope not.
Anyway, there are lots of benefits to using an agency. For example, the interview will be useful because they'll give you feedback on your performance so you can improve next time.
And they'll have access to jobs which aren't advertised.
Exactly. Most temporary jobs aren't advertised.
And I expect finding a temporary job this way takes a lot less time. It's much easier than ringing up individual companies.
Yes, indeed. Well, I think I've covered it.
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1.
To do very well for the IELTS listening, you have to ensure that you don't necessarily write anything that is written there already, because you definitely hear every single thing that has been written down. So ensure that you don't write whatever has been written already. For number 1, you have to realize that what you're looking out for has to be a name or a naming word. For number 2, best to color in the that sounds like something that reflects time. So you must realize that after listening for the phone number, what you're looking out for is a particular time to call a person. Number 3 tells you a particular kind of skills that you should have. Make sure you listen to the right kind of skill. For number 4, jobs are usually for at least one. Sometimes you just wonder what should it be? 1 year, 1 week, 1 month. But if you listen properly, you will realize it's 1 week. For number 5, you know definitely you're looking out for a particular amount. For number 6, apparently you're looking out for something that you would wear for the interview. If I wear you, I know I'm looking out for what would I wear. Would it be a shoe? What did he mention? He mentioned suit. You just watch out what you will wear to the interview. Number 7 tells you about what you would bring. Number 8 tells you about a question that will be asked. Then 9 and 10 tells us about a few benefits of using that particular agency. Now, let's check the answer choices and compare it with the ones you've chosen. Good day to you. This is a continuation of our IELTS listening practice questions. My name is Adeboyega Adebobola. I want to believe that you've learned a few things about the last questions we practiced together. Take a good look at the next set of questions and try to answer the questions as the tape is being played.
Part 2. You will hear a woman giving a presentation about a holiday on an island in Britain that her company organizes. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Good morning. My name's Erica Matthews, and I'm the owner of Matthews Island Holidays, a company set up by my parents. Thank you for coming to this presentation, in which I hope to interest you in what we have to offer. We're a small family-run company, and we believe in the importance of the personal touch. So we don't aim to compete with other companies on the number of customers. What we do is build on our many years' experience, more than almost any other rail holiday company, to ensure we provide perfect holidays in a small number of destinations, which we've got to know extremely well. I'll start with our 6-day Isle of Man holiday. This is a fascinating island in the Irish Sea, with Wales to the south, England to the east, Scotland to the north, and Northern Ireland to the west. Our holiday starts in Heysham, where your tour manager will meet you. Then you'll travel by ferry to the Isle of Man. Some people prefer to fly from Luton instead, and another popular option is to go by train to Liverpool and take a ferry from there. You have 5 nights in the hotel, and the price covers 5 breakfasts and dinners, and lunch on the 3 days when there are organised trips. Day 4 is free, and most people have lunch in a cafe or restaurant in Douglas. The price of the holiday includes the ferry to the Isle of Man, all travel on the island, the hotel, and the meals I've mentioned. Incidentally, we try to make booking our holidays as simple and fair as possible, so unlike with many companies, the price is the same whether you book 6 months in advance or at the last minute, and there's no supplement for single rooms in hotels. If you make a booking then need to change the start date, for example because of illness, you're welcome to change to an alternative date or a different tour for a small administrative fee.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
Okay, so what does the holiday consist of? Well, on day 1, you'll arrive in time for a short introduction by your tour manager, followed by dinner in the hotel. The dining room looks out at the river, close to where it flows into the harbour, and there's usually plenty of activity going on. On day 2, you'll take the coach to the small town of Peel, on the way calling in at the Tynwald exhibition. The Isle of Man isn't part of the United Kingdom, and it has its own parliament called Tynwald. It's claimed that this is the world's oldest parliament that's still functioning, and that it dates back to 979. However, the earliest surviving reference to it is from 1422, so perhaps it isn't quite as old as it claims. Day 3, we have a trip to the mountain Snaefell. This begins with a leisurely ride along the promenade in Douglas in a horse-drawn tram. Then you board an electric train which takes you to the fishing village of Laxey. From there, it's an 8-kilometre ride in the Snaefell Mountain Railway to the top. Lunch will be in the cafe, giving you spectacular views of the island. Day 4 is free for you to explore using the pass which we'll give you. So you won't have to pay for travel on local transport or for entrance to the island's heritage sites. Or you might just want to take it easy in Douglas and perhaps do a little light shopping. The last full day, Day 5, is for some people the highlight of the holiday, with a ride on the steam railway from Douglas to Port Erin. After some time to explore, a coach will take you to the headland that overlooks the Calf of Man, a small island just off the coast. From there, you continue to Castletown, which used to be the capital of the Isle of Man and its medieval castle. And on Day 6, it's back to the ferry, or the airport if you flew to the island, and time to go home. Now, I'd like to tell you a bit
Have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 2.
I want to believe that you followed the questions very well and you've chosen your answers. One of the first things you should observe is that while looking at the options, so many of the options are actually mentioned. That's for the same question. And that's how it's going to be on exam day. But you must learn to identify what is being contradicted, what is actually being mentioned, and what is just said in passing for another purpose. For question 11, of course, you need an information about the company. C was actually contradicted. And of course, the answer has to be A because it's been here for a longer time. For also question 12 and 13, I believe you heard the three options, but you need to check out what exactly did I hear about where customers will meet the manager, the town manager, and the lunches. You must also check for number 13 that the question refers to how many lunches you have, not necessarily the numbers that are mentioned. Of course, too, number 14, you must try to look out for what did I hear that I need to pay an extra for while going on this tour. For question 15 to 20, you realize that this is a table, and there are a few things you should learn about tables. Whenever you are actually see two different statements separated by a major space, like what you have on the first row, one of the things you have to realize is that the information about the first statement you will always hear before the information of the second statement. So you must always check those kind of sentences to know when has he finished talking about introduction by manager, when has he begun talk about the hotel dining room as view of a particular thing. You must also realize that it's not just when you have different statements separated by major space. Also, when you have semicolon separating a couple of clauses or phrases as the case may be, like the one you have on the third row, you realize that whatever information you hear, it will always be about travel. First, travel along promenade in a tram. Then you hear an information about train to Laxi. Then the final one, train to dash of Snarefield. You must also realize that it will always be rows by rows. That is how the tape is being played whenever you have a table. So it will always be the day, like for example, the first example, day 1, then you hear about activity, then you hear about the note about it. Day 2, the activity about day 2, then the note about it, till you actually finish it. When you actually know all of this, one of the things it does for you, it helps you follow the recording accordingly. When you know all of these things, it helps you to actually go along the tape properly, and by that you have a great chance at doing very well. Since you've chosen your answers now, please look at the following answers and compare what you've chosen. Welcome to Examplanet services. This is the part 3 of our listening practice tests. I want to believe you've learned a few things about how we choose answers for the first 2 practices we actually had. Look at the next set of questions and answer questions 21 to 30 as the record is being played.
Part 3. You will hear 2 psychology students discussing the effects of the order in which the children in a family are born. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Ed, how are you getting on with the reading for our presentation next week?
Well, okay, Ruth, but there's so much of it.
I know. I hadn't realised birth order was such a popular area of research.
But the stuff on birth order and personality is mostly unreliable. From what I've been reading, a lot of the claims about how your position in the family determines certain personality traits are just stereotypes, with no robust evidence to support them.
Okay, but that's an interesting point. We could start by outlining what previous research has shown. There are studies going back over 100 years.
Yeah, so we could just run through some of the typical traits. Like the consensus seems to be that oldest children are generally less well-adjusted, because they never get over the arrival of a younger sibling.
Right, but on a positive note, some studies claim that they were thought to be good at nurturing. Certainly in the past, when people had large families, they would have been expected to look after the younger ones.
There isn't such a clear picture for middle children, but one trait that a lot of the studies mention is that they are easier to get on with than older or younger siblings.
Generally eager to please and helpful. Although that's certainly not accurate as far as my family goes. My middle brother was a nightmare, always causing fights and envious of whatever I had.
As I said, none of this seems to relate to my own experience. I'm the youngest in my family, and I don't recognize myself in any of the studies I've read about. I'm supposed to have been a sociable and confident child who made friends easily, but I was actually terribly shy.
Really? That's funny. There have been hundreds of studies on twins, but mostly about nurture versus nature.
There was one on personality which said that a twin is likely to be quite shy in social situations because they always have their twin around to depend on for support.
My cousins were like that when they were small. They were only interested in each other and found it hard to engage with other kids. They're fine now, though.
Only children have had a really bad press. A lot of studies have branded them as loners who think the world revolves around them because they've never had to fight for their parents' attention.
That does seem a bit harsh. One category I hadn't considered before was children with much older siblings. A couple of studies mentioned that these children grow up more quickly and are expected to do basic things for themselves, like getting dressed.
I can see how that might be true, although I expect they're sometimes the exact opposite, playing the baby role and clamoring for special treatment.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
What was the problem with most of these studies, do you think?
I think it was because, in a lot of cases, data was collected from only one sibling per family, who rated him or herself and his or her siblings at the same time.
Some of the old research into the relationship between birth order and academic achievement has been proved to be accurate, though. Performances in intelligence tests decline slightly from the eldest child to his or her younger siblings. This has been proved in lots of recent studies.
Yes, although what many of them didn't take into consideration was family size. The more siblings there are, the likelier the family is to have a low socio-economic status, which can also account for differences between siblings in academic performance.
The oldest boy might be given more opportunities than his younger sisters, for example.
Exactly.
But the main reason for the marginally higher academic performance of oldest children is quite surprising, I think. It's not only that they benefit intellectually from extra attention at a young age, which is what I would have expected. It's that they benefit from being teachers for their younger siblings by verbalizing processes.
Right. And this gives them status and confidence, which again contributes in a small way to better performance. So, would you say sibling rivalry has been a useful thing for you?
I think so. My younger brother was incredibly annoying, and we fought a lot. But I think this has made me a stronger person. I know how to defend myself. We had some terrible arguments, and I would have died rather than apologize to him. But we had to put up with each other, and most of the time we coexisted amicably enough.
Yes, my situation was pretty similar. But I don't think having two older brothers made me any less selfish. I was never prepared to let my brothers use any of my stuff.
That's perfectly normal, whereas some...
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3.
I hope you didn't find that so difficult. For question 21 to 26, one of the things you realize about it is that it deals with you matching and classifying information. I want to believe you know by now that all we need to do is to locate how those ideas they relate to one another. We look out for synonyms and paraphrases that actually matches the description in each of those numbers. For number 21, the key word while listening to the recording is the word nurturing. Nurturing. So apparently it just means that the eldest children could be caring. For number 22, while you are listening to the recording, you realize that a middle child is actually easy to get along with. That means that they could be cooperative. For the third one, the youngest child is described as confident and sociable. Of course, that refers to outgoing. The fourth option, a twin is generally regarded as shy because they tend to rely on their twin sibling, which means they are kind of introverted. An only child is described as having to think that the world revolves around him or her, and actually matches the information that deals with selfishness. For the child that has much older sibling, the recording describes them that they grow up quickly and they learn to do things themselves. That tells us that they are kind of independent. So all we need to look out for is the exact kind of word that matches the information from letter A to H. If we actually continue on 27, we are looking out for the information that tell us about what the speakers say about evidence relating to birth order and academic sources. And 28 requires us to look out for the information that Ruth thinks is surprising and that actually makes a difference in the academics of the oldest child. When you go to 29 and 30, one of the things you have to take note when you see questions such as this is that we are looking out for experiences that the speakers agree on. So even if an experience is mentioned and they do not agree, that cannot be the answer. But amongst the 5 options, there are 2 particular options that they do agree are experiences that actually play a part in sibling rivalry. I want to believe we've learned a few things from that. Let's actually go to the next page and see the correct answers for 21 to 26. Okay, you can now go and scroll down to 27 to 30. You can actually compare it with your own options and know why you actually got a particular option correctly or wrongly. Thank you.